Bada bing, bada boom. Now, I know this may be sacrilege, but instead of having whiskey today, I have vodka. Not bad. I'm sure there's a number of you screaming through the screen right now, wondering why in the hell I would ever put myself as low as vodka. This one's actually not bad. By the way, hashtag not sponsored. This is a Boyd & Blair. Is that what it is? Yes, Boyd & Blair potato vodka, which surprisingly is an excellent sipping vodka just by itself. But enough of that bull pissing around. Oh, shit. Today we are taking a look at Guitar World's top 20 guitarists of the decade. Now, with the Rolling Stones top 100 guitarists of all time list, I was super apprehensive to look at this one, but I was definitely pleasantly surprised, I will say that. So let's run through the list really quick and take a look at each one on here. Just scrolling through the list here really quick, I'm noticing the presence of a number of legends on here, and I would say soon to be legends even on this list. And I'm noticing a very substantial lack of Iron Maiden on here. Do I think Iron Maiden deserves to be in the top 20 guitarists of the decade? No. But their bassist Steve Harris is starting a new band called British Lion. British Lion is releasing a new album and going on tour this year. Go ahead and check them out. I'll have links to their social media down below. Steve Harris of Iron Maiden is the bassist and principal songwriter of Iron Maiden, and this is his new group that he's putting together. And actually, the music's pretty cool. Again, links to their socials down below. And yes, this video is sponsored by British Lion. All right, number one on the list, Mark Tremonti. I was surprised to see him on here. Mark Tremonti, for those of you who are not familiar, is the guitarist of Alter Bridge and formerly the guitarist of Creed. As much as Creed is a meme and pretty much the butt of a lot of jokes in the music and rock and metal scene, seeing the guys from Creed without Scott Stapp going and making music on their own really was enlightening to me of like, wow, these guys are incredibly talented. I would have never really expected him to be on this list, but when I did the Rolling Stones top 100 guitarist list, I got an obnoxious amount of people saying that Mark Tremonti should be on there. So it's making me think, you know what, he probably has a bigger influence than I even know or I'm giving him credit for. As far as skills-wise, he has the skills. He can write some amazing solos and some really cool riffs, so that's no question to me. But yeah, especially with Alter Bridge, I think they are a lot more influential on young guitar players than a lot of people realize. So yes, I think he deserves to be on this list. Number two, Tosin Abasi. This is no surprise to me whatsoever. I would consider it a crime if he was not on this list. Tosin took the gent game that was just revolutionary at the time and already reinvented it by using his thump-style guitar playing into something that elevated it even further. I mean, it's very obvious the man has a plethora of influences that are all poured into his music, and with his virtuosic style, is able to incorporate all of them seamlessly. When you're talking with guitar players, no matter who it is, Tosin Abasi always comes up. This is a no-brainer to me. Number three is Gary Clark Jr. Now, I'm going to admit a substantial amount of ignorance about the blues guitar community, especially in modern times. I've heard his name tossed around, but I've never actually listened to anything by him, so I had to look him up. He's definitely a great blues player. Kind of reminded me of like a fusion of Jimi Hendrix and B.B. King. Weird fusion, I know, but it actually works. His tone is definitely heavily Hendrix inspired. I don't know enough about him to say that he doesn't deserve to be on this list, so I'm gonna have to seed this one and say, I'm not sure. But y'all can let me know in the comments below whether or not you think he deserves to be on this list. I am interested in your feedback. Nita Strauss at number 4. By the way, I don't think these are in a particular order. I think that they just have them on the list in general. I was also very surprised by her presence. I mean, obviously she is the lead guitarist for Alice Cooper, which is great, but not most of Alice Cooper's guitarists get on a list like this, especially in this decade. Now, I haven't listened to a whole lot of Nita's stuff outside of the Alice Cooper thing and outside of some licks that I catch on Instagram or little sound bites or video bites every once in a while. So I wasn't super familiar with her original work, which I took a look at the one they had on this article. It's pretty cool. So talent-wise, there is no question in my mind that she is talented enough to be on this list. But did she really innovate very much? That I don't know. My guess off the top of my head is probably not too much, but even still, listening to her playing and listening to her writing, I couldn't pick out specifically like, oh, this comes from here, oh, this comes from here. It felt like her voice. But even beyond that, which is something that I think is actually eminently more important, is the fact that she is the first female shredder that I know of where you're not like, oh, it's a girl guitar player. She has the skills to go up against anyone on this list, and she would at least stand a chance, if not kick their ass. So it's not like famous lady guitar players of the past where you knew deep down they weren't as good as the guy guitar players of that time. She is blazing the way to not just be a pretty face, even though she is a pretty face, and good on ya. She is blazing the way for other women who shred amazingly to finally have a place that isn't just like, oh, you came here for my boobs and you stayed for my boobs. I actually have substance to the music that I make. Sophie Burrell on Instagram, I think, is an excellent example of this. So in that sense, I would say Nita does deserve to be on this list because I think she's groundbreaking, personally. Number 5, John Petrucci. Now, at first I was like, yeah, no duh, but then I thought about it a little more and I'm like, does he deserve to be on the list for this decade? Full disclosure, I love John Petrucci to death. I did an interview with him. Like, I have zero hatred or doubt of his skills or influence. I thought about his albums that were released this year, and I thought to myself, I don't know how influential those albums specifically are, but I think that there's a bigger point to be made that even though he has his previous catalog, which is super influential on a lot of people, that started to really get blown up a lot more, I think, with the rise of social media, especially YouTube and Instagram. These young guitar players are coming up and exposing more people to this music, and you're like, huh, that's really cool, and that inspires other young guitar players and so on. I mean, case in point, I discovered Dream Theater in the 2010s. So yeah, I don't think it's unfair to say that he's one of the most influential in this decade. Number 6, Joe Bonamassa. This does not surprise me. I'm pretty sure he's been in the game for a while, but I hadn't heard his name until the 2010s. And everyone seems to blow their load over his blues playing, which I will say he's a very good guitarist. Considering how much he's talked about in the scene, this does not surprise me very much. Number 7, Guthrie Govan. If he wasn't on this list, I'd be mad. I found Guthrie Govan about the same time I found Dream Theater through the Professor Shred series on Guitar World, and the way that he was able to describe complicated techniques and ideas in a very simplified, common man way of speaking made me instantly latch on to him. When I was watching those, I was just like, oh yeah, this guy's like an awesome guitar player and a great teacher. And then I finally discovered some of his solo stuff and the Aristocrats, and I was like, oh no, he's like one of the greatest ever. Guthrie Govan used to be the best kept secret in the guitar community, and not anymore. And you know what? Good. Number 8 is Felicia, and that would be all the guitarists in Felicia. This to me is also a no-brainer. They took math rock and they took virtuosic shred and made it accessible for beautiful women to listen to. Let's be honest, most shred in metal is listened to by grungy, basement-dwelling men with neckbeards. They took the talent and the songwriting that we love as these neckbeard nerds and made it sexy and accessible for a lot more people. That's a no contest in my opinion. Matias Asado. I was extremely surprised to see him on this list. Like, if I look up Matias Asado's YouTube channel right now, he doesn't have that many more subscribers than me, and I thought that that was where his main platform was, but apparently I am incorrect. Which, I'm not trying to talk shit on his YouTube following at all. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I thought that's where he was most known, was the YouTube format, but apparently he is very prolific in the guitar community. I have zero question about his talent. He has some of the best articulation in the game, and his phrasing is amazing. So, I mean, there's like no question that talent-wise, he makes the cut. I guess I just didn't realize just how influential he was, and that's really cool, because, I mean, he is a great one to be inspired by, to learn from just by listening to him. So yeah, thumbs up on Matias. Number 10, John Mayer. This is a no-brainer to me. He took a slightly more virtuosic blues style and dressed it up with pop music scattered throughout his albums in order to be a blues guitar player. I can't blame the man for playing the game. Yes, he did make a bunch of snowflakey pop songs that are just like lovey-dovey and whatever, but in all honesty, I mean, I don't think the man lost any of his authenticity. He's a hell of a guitar player. I know a ton of people who not only enjoy him, but are very inspired by his playing and learn in his style. And not only that, but I mean, he's easily the most famous person on this list, hands down. So, I mean, enough said. Number 11, Jason Richardson. I fully agree with this. I was worried that he wouldn't be on the list just because I don't think now is the peak of his time. because I think he's only going to get bigger. First sentence is, Jason Richardson is representative of the new generation of shredders. Easily. He and Tosin Abasi together, in my opinion, are the next step in shred and virtuoso in metal. I'm absolutely stunned not only by his facility on the instrument, but how he can actually use his virtuosic skill in composition to do things no one else can do. He is an incredible composer. Really, really, really good. I think Steven Taranto is going to be following in his footsteps. Not that he'll be a copy, he'll be his own version of this, but yeah, I think that's the next step, man, is guys like those two. Number 12, St. Vincent. I am extraordinarily hesitant to see her on this list. St. Vincent, I believe, is the group. The guitar player, the front lady, is Annie Clark. I'm gonna try and say this in a way that doesn't make it sound like she can't play well, because I can tell she can play well. But from the multiple videos that I looked at and researched, honestly, I wasn't super impressed. There are some really cool moments with her on the guitar, I will say that. I find her to have an over-reliance on effects that absolutely mold the guitar into something else, and she doesn't do anything skill-wise on the fretboard that would lead me to believe that she's composing from a actual consistent composition standpoint. I could be wrong on this. This is just my first instinct on watching a lot of these videos. As far as St. Vincent's influence, I have no idea. Never heard of them. A number of my guitar friends I'd talked to also were like, no clue. Like in this sentence it says, in Clark's hands, the instrument yelps, roars, writhes, growls, warbles, squeals, and rumbles, which is basically to say that she has a broad breadth of sounds and timbres that she can make with her instrument. I understand that and appreciate that. I feel like she's having the effects do most of the heavy lifting on that. And that to me usually isn't as talented, in my personal opinion. Again, I'm willing to hear people say to the contrary and tell me what I'm missing, so please let me know in the comments below. Number 13, Synyster Gates. This is a no duh. You could argue he was more influential last decade, but he wasn't that less influential this decade. People still love Avenged Sevenfold and they still love Synyster Gates. He is still metal royalty as far as we're all concerned. He's also one of the few guitar players who, when he gets into a metal band and gets really successful, a lot of them start to plateau. He consistently gets better and more impressive as far as his personal playing goes. Every album, he's better. And he is incredibly influential in the metal community. Enough said. Number 14, Kiko, God, I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. Kiko LaRue, I don't know. Somebody tell me how to pronounce it. I feel like an asshole now. First things first, he is an incredibly talented guitar player. My only question is, I don't know if he deserves to be on the top 20 guitarists of the decade list. Without him being a part of Megadeth, I wouldn't know who he was. That's not to talk down on his talent at all, but it does speak to his influence and his impact on the decade. Now, you could say, I mean, he's with Megadeth and there are kids listening to this new Megadeth record. I don't know. I could be missing something here. I absolutely could. And my instinct is still no, there probably could be somebody better on this list. But I am more than willing to hear your thoughts about it in the comments. Number 15, Misha Mansour. That is a no freaking brainer. He basically pioneered the modern idea of djent, which has been done and played out to death. By the way, that sounded like I hate it. I actually love Periphery. They're one of my top bands ever. He is the father of 2010s metal, essentially. Freaking next. Number 16, Derek Trucks. Absolutely. I would say even last decade, he should have been on last decade's list. You will not find, in my opinion, a better slide player. The guy is incredible. I don't even care that much for slide playing. The way that he chooses to articulate and embellish notes with that slide is absolutely gorgeous. Highly recommend going on a YouTube deep dive into Derek Trucks solos. Number 17, Joe Satriani. I question this one. I love Satch. There's no denying his talent and influence on shredders and guitar players. I just don't know how influential he was this decade. I don't hear too many people talking about him as much as they did last decade. At least maybe that's just where my headspace is. And maybe there's a lot more young guitar players discovering him than I'm giving him credit for. I don't know if he deserves to be on the list for this decade or not. That's a really tough one. For context, I grew up with Joe Satriani as a teenager. This guy is highly inspiring and influential to me. Number 18, Eric Gales. This one, I had no clue who this guy was, and luckily I was talking to my buddy Zach, who filled me in like, oh no, Eric Gales is the man. He's like blues, funk, jam. He's a left-handed guitar player, but he plays with the strings strung upside down. I'm just like, okay, let's see where he can go with this. He goes places other people can't go. He is a monster. And I didn't realize just how much he is actually out there in the guitar community right now. The dude is insane. As far as I understand it, this has been his biggest decade, although I could get that wrong. But yeah, I could totally see him being on this list. That does not surprise me. Number 18, Trey Anastasio. Now, not talking any crap on his talent level, but I don't think he deserves to be on the list for this decade. This is the one where I'm gonna go pretty hard, and I mean, please let me know if you feel differently in the comments below, but I think his time's done. Last decade, sure. The decade before that, definitely. This decade, I don't think so. Now, I definitely get wanting to have proper jam band representation on this list. They deserve it. There's some incredible jam band guitar players out there. I just don't think he's the best one for this decade. My personal guess and taste would be, and again, I am not super in touch with the jam band community, but I think it would be Jimmy Herring. For those of you who don't know, Jimmy Herring is the guitarist since 2006 for Widespread Panic. Widespread Panic is a band where if I listen to one of their albums, I start to get bored, unless it's like in the background of just hanging out with a bunch of friends, like on a blanket on the grass in the summertime. It's like perfect music for that. But if you go see them live, they are insane. Billy Herring plays in a way that I've never heard anyone play before. It's like perfectly soft and smooth and gentle, yet somehow also a ridiculous shred at the same time. He's disgusting. I've heard a lot more people in my generation, at least, talk about Widespread Panic and Humphreys McGee and Disco Biscuits than I have Fish. Fish, as far as I understand it, is kind of old hat in the jam community. I could be wrong. I'm not trying to be an asshole. Just trying to say who does and doesn't belong on this list. At number 20, my boy, Steve Vai. For those of you who are unaware, Steve Vai is my favorite guitar player and favorite artist. I don't know if he deserves to be on this list either, and that's coming from a number one fan type right here. Basically, everything that I said about Joe Satriani goes the same for Steve Vai with this decade. Of course, I've definitely heard him talked about significantly more, but that's also because I talk about him all the time on my channel. So I have to admit to being in somewhat of a bubble when it comes to Steve Vai. Though, and maybe it's because I don't follow Joe Satriani as much, I feel like Steve Vai does the social media game really well. So he may be more influential this decade than I'm giving him credit for. He very well could be. That one is still a question mark to me though. So my final thoughts on this list is that I was so pleasantly surprised. Whereas the 100 greatest guitar players of all time list by Rolling Stone felt more of like a slap in the face to the next generation, this was like an acknowledgement of the next guys who are here now, kicking ass and inspiring the next generation after them of guitar players. Hands down, guitar is the healthiest and very alive and well in the metal and hard rock and virtuoso scene, so that also includes things like jam band and jazz. Whereas a lot of the other people who are massively influenced by these more bread and butter type guitar players, I feel like aren't as much guitar players as they are either storytellers through a musical format or are just trying to be a part of a lifestyle that they don't fully understand, and if they did try to fully understand it, would reject it. That list feels so much more representative of guitar players to me, not singer-songwriters. Not trying to shit on singer-songwriters, but they aren't the best guitar players almost always. There's definitely a lot more representation, again, of the shred community on there. I wonder, and I definitely am biased in favor of the shred community, I wonder if there is maybe a little bit too much representation. I don't know for sure, but I think there honestly could be. I think you could probably get one more blues guy on there. Maybe some other experimental thing that I'm unfamiliar with, which I think was probably what they were going for with Annie Clark. I don't know. And also, Guitar World did the right thing. It didn't rank them in order of who was most to least influential. They just put them on there. Like, these are all very influential guitar players this decade. These 20 above any others. All in all, I thought that was a very good list. Even my exceptions that I took, I'm like, I mean, I'm not mad about it. I don't feel personally insulted like I did with the Billboard list or the freaking Rolling Stone list. It wasn't like I had to go on a crusade or anything. Speaking of Crusade, my band is playing Nashville January 29th at the Cobra at 8 p.m. Come see us. We're going to be joined by a couple of other awesome bands as well. It's going to be some great music. And if you think that I'm too full of myself or that I'm a pain in the ass or that I'm wrong, come tell me in person at the Cobra in Nashville, Tennessee at 8 p.m. Warning, you'll be charged $5 at the door if you are only coming to bitch at me. So I'm very curious, who do you think does and doesn't deserve to be on this list? Did they miss anybody? I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say. Let me know again in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you've been watching a couple of my videos and you're not sure whether or not you want to subscribe yet, go ahead and subscribe at this point. If you would like to help me keep making badass videos for you, please follow me on Subscribestar. And you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Become the Knight. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next video. Rock on!